Hey, can you hear me now? Apparently, I clicked the wrong button when setting this up. Communications. Let's go with this. Save. Okay, so you should be hearing me now. There we go. Let's try this again.
Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome back to another live Q&A.
Having a little bit of fun here with my new audio system and setting up new things. This is the first time I've gotten a chance to use this microphone, so sorry about that. If any of you are watching live and like to have your questions answered, go ahead and leave them in the chat below, and we will have a little bit of fun with that. If you can leave a question at the beginning or something to notify me that there is a question there, that way I'm not getting lost in the chat, we'll be able to get to those a little bit easier. I'll try and get to as many as I can before. Let's see. Also, things coming up on the 3rd of February. That's 2 weeks from Saturday. I will be in Fredericksburg, Virginia at the Fredericksburg Woodworking Guild, and I'll get a chance to talk there. So I'm looking forward to meeting a few of you if you have a chance to come out there. It's a free event, and you can look them up on their Facebook page to find out more information about where it's held and all of that, man. I will be heading out that way and meeting with a couple other people, possibly doing a hangout with William Walker from the Craft Creators Collective. Wow, I'm having a hard time today. So there's a lot of interesting things coming up, but let's get into
some questions.
Okay, yeah, I'm having too much fun with my new audio board. So we have a couple questions that came in earlier. Fruition Forge. I'm sorry, I'm going to be butchering names, and those are going to be coming along. Fruition Forge asks, do the numbers just refer to size? For example, when searching for number 5 plane, I search results come back with a number 5 jack plane, a number 5 joiner, a number 5 smoother, and etc. Well, the numbers on the plane refer more to the order in which Stanley produced them. So the first 9 planes were all in size as Stanley put them out. And so 1 is the little one, 9 is the big one. But then you go to a 9.5, 1 to 8. Then you go to like 9, 9.5, and you start getting into other odd things. And as the numbers progress, then they get into all sorts of other things until you're in 45 and 50, and you're talking about a combination plane. So 1 through 8 are basically the sizes of the plane. The bigger the number, the bigger the size. After that, the numbers don't mean anything. Now, a number 5 is kind of the in-between size. It's long enough you can use it as a joiner, but yet it's still small enough that you can smooth with it. If you put a cambered iron on there, then it can also be used as a scrub plane or a 4-plane. And there's a lot of different things that the number 5 can be. And so therefore, it's kind of the jack plane. It's the jack of all trades. It can be whatever you want it to be. And so a lot of people will throw a qualifier on there that this is a joiner plane, and other people say, no, it's a smoother plane, and other people say, no, it's a jack plane, and it's a number 5. It's referring to that length of plane and that width that Stanley Bailey kind of put out. I do have a video on the first 8 numbers of Stanley as well. So if you want to see that, go ahead and take a look at that. I would like to do another one here. I'm hoping to buy a number 2 soon and maybe borrow someone's number 1 and actually do a video where I have all of the planes set up 1 through 8 with all of the quarter and half items in there. So that would be a fun one to put together. We will see, though. Let me see. Making sure my voice is still sounding good. Hey, good. Sounds like it's actually working. I never quite know. Let's see. We had another question here from Guillaume Laurent. I should know your name, but I don't. I am sorry. I'm going to butcher everyone's name here. For a video, how long of raw footage do you shoot? Not counting the doubles or multiples for other angles. How long does it take for you to edit the video down? It really depends on most videos, but if you're talking about like the long format videos I've been doing recently that are, the 20 to 30 minute range, if like a 20-minute video, I probably have about 2 hours of footage. And it will probably end up taking me somewhere between 4 and 6 hours to edit that down, depending upon the video and how much time I need to mix around. So in the long terms, the long format videos actually don't take as much time. When I'm talking about the quicker videos, like the normal 12-minute long ones where I'm narrating over video footage that I've shot, those ones I might have 4 to 5 hours of video footage, where I've got all these clips from different angles and different things, and I'll whittle through those and then recording the voiceover. Those ones I might have as much as like 10 hours in an editing of a video. Those actually take more. And so I kind of like doing the more detailed, longer format. They're actually a little bit less work to do. The question is whether or not enough people want to watch them. And so far, this particular series, it looks like a lot of people are liking that format. So I think in the future, I'm going to be doing a lot more of that format, but I'm going to be mixing in a lot of the other quick tip videos and talking about planes and a couple other restoration videos. So I would like to actually make a mix in the future and then be the mainstay of the channel doing the long format videos. So 2 of the 3 a week being the long format and the third one being another mix. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for the future. Let's get down here to some of the other questions. Old Plank Woodworks asks my opinion on the Stanley Sweetheart socket chisels. I'm assuming you are talking about the new chisels that recently came out, well, a couple years ago, that are they're rebranding the Stanley Sweetheart logo on the chisels, and I've gotten a chance to use them several times, and they're good chisels. I'm not a big fan of socket chisels. I haven't gotten to the point where I really like them. I like a tang chisel myself, but that's a personal preference. The most important thing about chisels is the handle. Do you like how they handle? Do you like how they feel in your hand? And I'm not as big of a fan of how those feel in my hand. As to the steel, okay, it looks like we're back. If someone can respond, apparently there was some odd glitch with Google Hangouts. Oops. Oh well. So I think I answered that question with socket chisels. That was a fun one to get back. Let me go back to where I was. Marcus Richard asks, did you use any glue on the side table? And no, there was no hardware and no glue used on the side table at all. So that was a fun one. I actually ended up giving that side table to my parents. So I figured that would be Yes, fun. Yeah, you're back. Good. Whew, we're live. I love technology. Technology makes everything enjoyable, doesn't it? Let's see. Question from Doc Darkness. How long you been reading Robert Jordan? Actually, let's see. The first time I went through the series was, or at least as far as I went, I think was in like 2006, and I stopped because all the books weren't out. And as they are now all out, I decided to start them back up again. And so now I'm reading all through them, and right now I am on book. I'm just about to finish book 13, and so hopefully be able to finish the series finally in the next month or so. So yeah, if you don't know, I list whatever book I'm currently reading in the video descriptions. So if you ever want to see the videos that I'm listening to in my headphones, the books that I'm reading, I do audiobooks constantly. So I list those in the description of what one I'm reading, and I give it a little 0 to 10 of what I like about the book. Let's see. Brad Knecht asks, do you have any suggestions on how to get a warp out of a handsaw? That may depend. If it's a back saw, it may be that it is pinched in the back. And so a lot of times the back running along it is squeezing along it, and the plate itself is kind of bent in that. And what you can do is turn the blade over so the back is down and tap the back on the bench, and it's a flat, and that will push the whole blade back down into that back. And that may take the bend out of it. If you're talking about a handsaw, then the easiest thing is just to bend it back into place. Now it's made of spring steel, so it takes a lot to bend those. But if you bend it in the opposite direction a little ways and see if the kink came out, then bend it a little bit more and see if it came out, and bend it a little bit more and see if it came out. And doing that a few times, eventually you'll get it back to straight. Now, if you have a kink in the blade, and that is a point at which the blade bends abruptly and it's not a smooth curve, then on a lot of saws, it's at that point you just throw it away or turn it into card scrapers. You can fix that by putting it on an anvil and hitting it and peening it, and that spreads the steel on one side of the blade. And if you do it, and it takes a long time, and doing it very correctly, you can generally take the kink out to an acceptable point. But it takes a lot of skill, and most of the time, learning that skill, you're going to end up ruining a couple saws before you figure out how to do it. So yes, if there's a kink in it, I'm sorry, you're kind of up a creek without a paddle. I might do a video sometime on how to peen that out, but I don't have a saw in my repertoire right now where that would be functional. We'll see though. What are all the bibs behind me? Yes, these are my running bibs from 2017. I've done a couple races in 2018, but because they're series races, I can't hang up their bibs. I'm still using them. So each year I hang up the bibs of this year. So I'll be taking all these ones down soon and hanging up the first few from this year. So yeah, I keep all of my races. Some of them, like, let's see where I can do this. This one here is an ultra race. That was my first ultra. Yeah, no, that was a marathon. Let's see, this one up here, that was the ultra. So I have a few marathons on there. Most of them are like 5K, the cheap races that I do around here. But yes, I like to run. Let me put that one in here. So if any of you are watching this in the future and not live, I'm trying to add all of these questions into the description as I go, so that you guys can just click on the timestamp and jump to them. Oh, pinched my thumb. I'm going to be buying card scrapers or something in the near future. Any suggestions before I buy? This is from Blake Makinson. For card scrapers, a lot of people are going to put a lot of emphasis one way or the other into the quality of the steel in a card scraper. And in all honesty, a card scraper, it doesn't matter. If you want to make one, you can go and get an old handsaw and cut out a piece from that and use it. I really don't care much about the quality of the steel in the card scraper, because if you get it harder, the blade will last a little bit longer, but it may become more brittle and snap off. So it's 6 of one, half dozen another. I have a series of different ones I use for different sakes. I have some of them that are really soft and some of them are really hard. The only question is that your burnisher be something that is harder than the steel of your card scraper. I've recently purchased a carbide steel rod. Not carbide steel. What's the term? It's carbide, so it's harder than hardened steel, and it will turn a burr on the cards phenomenally. But basically any piece of hardened steel, if you have a file that has a safe side, in other words, a smooth side without any ridges, that can be used as a burnisher. You just need something that's harder than the card itself. Could you do a video on making a wooden knife or just for fun on a weekend project? That is on my list. This is from the Wright channel, Joshua Wright. Hey, I like that channel name. That making a wooden knife is on my list. I don't know when I will get to it. My list is rather long, but it might be a fun little quick project sometime. We'll see. What's the best way, in your opinion, to affix a live slab coffee table top to the base without using metal brackets or through tenons? Without using any hardware at all, the best way is a sliding dovetail. Which is what I'm doing on the coffee table, what I did do on the coffee table. That video for the sliding dovetail should be coming out next Tuesday, I think, because it still allows the expansion and contraction of the slab, but still holding it securely in place. Without using screws or hardware, that is, in my opinion, the best way to do it. The other simple way is you just get a small block of wood, any little block of wood, and you put a screw through up into the top, and you put a screw through into the skirt, and that will work as well, as long as you leave them with a slot so you can have the expansion and contraction of the slab. I'm not a fan of putting tenons through a top unless they are floating, which I'm probably going to be doing for my coffee table, though, because I'm going to be doing more of a Nakashima style. They won't be through tenons. They'll just be gravity holding the top on, and the tenons keep the top from sliding on the frame. So the tenons only go up into the top about a ½ inch and just rest there, and those will allow the top to expand and contract without moving around. But the top on this table will end up being around 300 pounds. So I don't have to worry about it being moved that much. Yeah, I'm going to actually be going up to Matt Cremona's on Friday to pick up slabs for that project. He has one that he milled up almost 3 years ago, 29-inch wide live slabs of red oak that I'm going to be picking up for the tabletop. That should be a lot of fun. Hard to find oak over here in Norway, but we have a lot of birch. What kind of uses does birch have? This is from Ole, Norwegian last name. I'm sorry, I'm not even going to try that one, Ole. Birch is actually a really nice, useful wood. It's a little softer on average than cherry, but there's a bunch of different types of birch that go all over the place. And you could use it for just about anything. Basically, anywhere you would use cherry, it would be a great furniture wood. It dings a little bit easier than oak. But yeah, birch is actually a really nice hand tool wood. Works very smoothly. It's reminds me a lot of box elder. Very, very nice wood to work with. And I have to say, I talk a lot about using white oak and how much I love white oak. And I think that has given some people the wrong idea that white oak is a great and easy wood to work with. And no, white oak is actually a painful, difficult, hard wood to work with. It is not only is it hard, but it's very stringy and it's a mess to work with and often causes a lot of problems, especially with hand tools. It is not an easy wood to work with. The reason why I use it is because, well, number one, I have a ton of it, and it's fairly easy to come by around here. But number two, I love the way it ends up. The end effect and appearance of it is worth all of the pain and struggle that really goes into making it. So I love white oak for that purpose, but as a hand tool, it is a difficult and painful wood, and I would not consider it to be a hand tool wood, unless you're as stubborn as I am. But wood like birch, box elder, cherry, those are fantastic hand tool woods. They work easily, they're fun to work with, and birch can have a ton of color in it, especially when you get into some of the flame in there. Birch is a very beautiful wood, so definitely use it for just about anything you want. I don't know if I would use it for mallet head unless you want a softer mallet head, but just about any type of furniture, birch would be a good one. RamChickPig, which I just gave him some chisels, so I hope you like those chisels. Does your diamond stones get rusty, and how do you prevent it? No, I don't use water on them because water will rust them. I use Windex or a window cleaner that evaporates very quickly. So even if I don't wipe them off, they evaporate and it's not a problem. I do wipe them off at the end of each use, just basically to keep them from getting dirty and letting all the junk build up. But no, I've never had any problem with rust on them. And every time I pulled them out of the plate to check the underside, I haven't noticed any rust on there. So I have not noticed an issue with that. I do every now and then, excuse me, when I oil down most things in my shop, I will pull the plates out and oil the underside just because they're in constant contact with the wood. But I haven't noticed any issue down there. Hey, Shane, love your new post drill. Looking forward to seeing you work on that. And if any of you haven't seen Shane's Hobby Shop, Shane is here in the chat, and he just bought a post drill, very similar to mine, only a slightly larger version of it. And his actually has a motor attached to it. They took the crank off and attached a motor onto it, and it's kind of a cool beast. So looking forward to seeing you restoring that. Phil Makes Things has asked the question, do you use iron planes or do you use wooden planes too? Have you ever made one? I asked because I'd like to make a joining plane this year. I have made many wooden planes, and I don't use them as much because I try to use tools that most people have easily on hand, and the standard Bailey pattern plane is one that is most anywhere, and excuse me, most people can get their hands on, so I like to use that. The things that a wooden plane is fantastic for: smoothing, the burnishing. Excuse me. Need to bring a drink down next time. Smoothing, burnishing, they leave the surface feeling beautiful. The wood sliding across the work, it feels great in the hand. There's a haptic feedback that it's phenomenal. For jointing, I'm not as big of a fan of using a wooden jointer. I haven't felt the need to do that. But for smoothing, I love that. For a scrub plane, they're great and quick and easy. For a lot of the individual planes, like making a grooving plane, a tonguing plane, the molding planes, you can make one very easily and very simply. I have a couple of videos of making one out of firewood. I actually have a video making this smoothing plane about 2 years ago. And this was a lot of fun. Ash with a purple heart soul, and I just got this one back. The guy who won it down in Argentina, for some reason there's a problem with the shipping, and I haven't been able to get it to him. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with it, or if I just want to put it in my repertoire and use it, because this is a beautiful, beautiful plane, and feels really good on the wood. But this is one of the first smoothing planes I ever made. I really, really like it. So let's go down. Make Brooklyn asks, any plans to start streaming your daily workflow on Twitch or filming on the YouTubes? I have thought about doing that, and I would like to, but I want to do it right, and that requires a good chunk of extra hardware. I need to get an interface between the camera and the computer. I'd like to get a switcher so I can have up a couple different views. So I could have a close-up and then one shooting the general bench, then possibly another one from the top down, and then mixing the audio with that. There's just a lot of little things that I would like to do with it, and then having a screen so I can read comments. It would be good if I had a second person there who could move a camera around. Yes, I could just set up one camera and go, but I would like to do it right, and so we will see. But it is on my list to do. So yes, coming up sometime in the future. Let's Kyle Boon asks, I got a box of old tools from someone, and one of them is an old coffin smoother. There's a fair amount of checking in the bottom. Is it worth trying to restore? I would have to look at it. If the checking is in the bottom, what you can do is re-oil it. In other words, like soak it in boiled linseed oil or something of that nature to try and get the wood to expand and fill that back up. You could fill the crack with epoxy and then re-smooth out the bottom. But most of the time with those, I would say the body is trash. Use the blade and build a new one. And use the old one as a template to build a new one, and that's a great learning experience. But in that case, I would probably get rid of the body and use the blade for something else, unless the body had particular sentimental value or had something interesting about it to keep it. They're a fairly common plane that you can get at most antique shops, but I guess I would have to leave that up to you. But yeah, saving it wouldn't be that difficult of an issue if you can get the crack to seal back up or if you fill the crack with something else. And now I'm into the state of the comments where everything broke. Oh well. Trying to find more questions. If you have a question, if you can put like question at the beginning or something so I can actually see it. What's the most quirky vintage hand tool you've found? Quirky vintage hand tool. This is from Worth the Effort. And if you haven't seen Worth the Effort, you've got to check out his channel. He's actually one of the big reasons why I am into woodworking. Wow, that's a difficult question because there are so many out there, and there are so many tools that are made specifically for an individual specific purpose on one job, where some maker either had to do that job a bunch of times and so they made a tool to make it, or they just needed to do it once and they wanted to make a tool. So okay, I have to qualify that by then saying, okay, let's work with a production tool. In other words, a tool that was made by a company rather than just a maker who made a tool. I would have to then say the swing fence tongue and groove, the Stanley number. I can't remember what it is. It's such a simple idea for a tool. Basically, it's like a tonguing plane, but a really simple knockdown, cheap steel tonguing plane. But then it has a swing fence on it, where one way the fence allows it to be a tonguing plane, and then you rotate the fence around 180, and it cuts off one of the tongues of the tonguing plane and turns it into a grooving plane. And so with one tool, you can very quickly swing the fence around and make a tongue and groove. And it's just one of those really simple tools that is just, it's phenomenal, but looks so weird. And until you wrap your brain around it, it's like, what? But I think that's the first one that comes to mind. There are hundreds of other really weird tools. I mean, any compass plane is just a really weird tool, but yeah, that question requires a lot more thought. Markus Skov, how do you sharpen a card scraper and make those fuzzy shavings? I actually have a couple videos on sharpening and making your own card scraper, so if you want to see that in more detail. And sharpening a card scraper is something that is going to be very specific to the person because there are thousands of ways of doing it, and until you find a way that really makes you happy, you're not going to be happy. What I like to do is take the card scraper and burnish the top flat and kind of pull out on either side, and then I will lay it over its side and I'll pull that burr out flat with the blade, and then I'll roll it back over and I'll burnish the top down flat again to push that curve. And so I'm kind of bending it back and forth and drawing out more and more on the corner, and then I will take the burnisher and hold it like 15 degrees or so and then run along each side to hook that hook down a little bit farther. That gives me a fairly heavy hook that catches very easily. The problem with it is bending it back and forth like that makes it a little brittle. So if you don't do it just right, that hook will pop off. So yeah, there are a bunch of different ways to do it. Until you find the way that works for you, you're not going to be happy with it. But spend some time in the shop with a good burnisher and a card scraper and play around with it back and forth until you find a method that you like. And once it clicks, it's phenomenal. The whole world suddenly changes, and card scraper becomes this amazing thing that you can use. So Doc Darkness asks again, best advice to get back on track after lapsing terribly in all things making, i.e. shop is just a mess and projects all half done. Jump in. Well, look for what, number one, look for what you want to do. If you don't want to do it, then don't. I think a lot of people have this like feeling that they have to complete something, they have to work on something, and there's no reason for that. If you don't want to do something, don't. Or if you don't want to do something, find some way of doing it that actually then piques your interest. Is there a new way of doing something? Is there a technique that might be new to learn? But for me, the best way to get back into it is clean the shop, put everything away. And usually in doing so, I'll get all these ideas for shop storage projects. And I'll do a few shop storage projects until I feel that the shop is now functional. And then I just have to get back to making something. So that's kind of my mental process, but I'm not like everyone. My biggest recommendation, though, is find something that you want to do. Find something that intrigues you, or if there's something you have to do, something that's kind of in your way of getting to other things, then find a way of doing it that intrigues you. Is there another hand tool, or is there a tool you can make to make it happen easier? And kind of experiment with it and use it as a chance to learn. What software do you use for editing? I use Adobe Premiere. It's like $20 a month, and you can use it. It's a professional system that works well. In the past, I have used Hit Films, and they have a free version that anyone can download, and it will do just about everything that Premiere will do, but it has a few quirks and oddities and things like that that come with any free program. And when you're doing it for a business, it's just good to have something that's a little more solid. If you're doing it for hobby, Premiere is a fantastic way to edit videos. Yeah. Know What Mom Knows, another great channel, asks, I want to run some kind of hand tool over a blank. I made and pull off connected sheets of thin paper like veneer, so I can place that veneer on projects. So basically you're wanting to make a piece of veneer by cutting it. That is a very, very hard skill to do. And when you're talking about a cut veneer, you're probably thinking of like the Japanese videos you've seen where they have all this end grain sticking up of different colors, and they cut off these sheets and veneer those down. Number one, you need a plane that does not have a chip breaker. So you have your blade coming down and a chip breaker on top of that. Chip breaker compresses the chip and deforms the chip, but also makes it break off earlier so you don't have tear out. Number one, you need to get rid of that chip breaker, which most Japanese planes, I'm going to get chewed out on this. A lot of Japanese planes don't have a chip breaker. A lot of old English style planes don't have a chip breaker. And so those you can do that as well. But number two, it's got to be set up within an inch of its life. Everything on that has got to be absolute perfect. The blade has to be absolute perfection. The wood you're working with has to be really nice, straight grain, or if you're doing end grain, it has to be glued perfectly and be in great shape. It's really more about the setup on the plane. Once you get rid of the chip breaker and you have it set up for it, a low angle cut on there is extremely beneficial. And the Japanese do make planes specifically for that. And I don't know what the name of it is. I'm sure someone will chime in here with them. I haven't gotten as much into those. But yeah, low angle, set up within an inch of its life, no chip breaker, and experiment. It is not an easy thing to do. It takes a serious amount of skill. So yeah. Do have loads of work. Maybe do a project with Matt. Nice vid. This is from Willem van Manen. Yeah, we are thinking about doing a collab if we can get some time, but we will see. I've got a few fun projects possibly to do that way. Know What Mom Knows also asks what I want to run some kind of oh, okay, it was the same question, sorry. Do you usually draw? Markus Skov asks, do you usually draw plans or do you normally just wing it? If I'm building for myself and I just want to build and have fun, then I just wing it. I like to say, I want something about this long and not use any measurements, not use any measuring tools. I just go off of what reality is. And so if I need to make stretchers and legs, then I put 2 legs on there and then minus out what the stretchers need to be. And I mark things off of the reality of what the piece is, as opposed to marking things off what a plan says it needs to be. I am forcing myself now to make plans for things, and that's because a lot of people have asked me, hey, can you sell plans? And that is really pushing me out of my comfort zone to make plans, but I'm trying to make them ahead of time so that I can build according to my plans and then re-edit the plans to fit what I actually did in reality. So yes, I do not normally follow plans. It is harder for me. I don't like using measurement. I don't like using a tape measure. If I can get away without using it, I will. And for just building something, there's no reason to have a measuring device in the shop that gives you a markings that are specific to metric or standard. And yeah, that's the fun. Don't get me down that rabbit chat. Wow, my throat is having all sorts of problems. Cody Nelson asks, how many coats of BLO mixture do you typically apply to your projects, and how long do you wait between coats? I will keep applying coats until it stops soaking in. And so for most things with my white oak, with how dry my white oak is, that's usually like 3 coats, and I'll wait like 15 minutes in between. I don't let them cure. I just keep putting it on until it stops soaking in. There's a pile on top, and then I wipe it off. And usually I'll wait like 30, 40 minutes, and I'll wipe on my paste wax. If that's all I'm doing is the boiled linseed oil and paste wax finish. If I'm going to be putting on something else, like I did for the side table, I ended up finishing that with poly. I put on the coats of BLO to get the finish I was looking. I think I just put 1 coat of BLO on there. I didn't even wait for it to seal in because I was just looking to add the color. Wipe off the excess. With that, I let it sit overnight. It was probably about 14, 15 hours until it was dry to the touch. And, sometimes with BLO, when you push on the wood, it will kind of soak back up to the surface. And I waited until I could push on it and I didn't feel anything. And then I wiped on my poly finish on top of that. So for most things, I don't wait for it to cure. I just go on wet, and it's a very, very fast finish that way. And you can just wait until the wax dries from the paste wax. So that's my general thing that I do for most shop tools and storage. It's very quick, very easy. Not a durable finish, but looks good. And as long as you're reapplying the wax occasionally, it looks phenomenal and will last for a long time. How to carve a round step down using hand tools in front of a box so that a loudspeaker will ideally flush with the front of it. I don't know exactly what you're saying. Are you talking like a round mortise that is cut into a surface? In which case I would just cut a round mortise into a surface. If you're wanting a perfectly round surface, then you would have to have a gouge that fits that round surface, or a smaller gouge and just take out a whole bunch of little nips until you actually get it down to a round surface. I guess you would have to clarify that question. So yeah, feel free to clarify that, and if we get to it, I'll try and answer it then. Let's see. How to no, that was the wrong one. That was from hand 4444. Let me put this in here. Hey Joe's Basement Woodworking. Good to have you here. Question from Daniel Dent. I recently took out a bunch of oak. I think it's red oak flooring. Do you think it's worth cleaning up for woodworking projects? Sure. Depends on what its quality is. If you're talking like old tongue and groove, that can actually be a very good flooring. A good wood to use. You're because of the grooves in the bottom, you're never going to get something that's a full 3/4 inch thick. But yes, I've used flooring for other small projects. It's great for any small things like hand tools and things like that. Another thing that is phenomenal for is reused wall paneling, kind of like the stuff you have around here. Well, this isn't that. This is just pine. But I've seen a lot of people do that as well. So I guess it depends on, do you want to store it and wait? When I look at lumber and I want to get a batch of it, I look at my storage supply and I ask myself, is it worth holding this on hand and thinking that I might get a chance to use it? Or do I have a particular project in hand? And I have a bunch of my lumber storage that I have a specific project in mind for that piece. So I guess that's the question you're going to have to ask yourself. Ooh. We're just bounced. Wow, I lost where I was at. Oh, there we are. How do you go about cutting wedges for tusked mortise or other small joinery that ordinarily are cut on a bandsaw? I actually I just made tusked tenons for the spring pole lathe. So if you want to see those, I have a video on how I did that. Anytime I would want to actually turn a cut like I would on a bandsaw, I would actually use a turning saw, and the one I have is actually a bandsaw blade in a frame saw, and so you can use it to turn just like you would with a bandsaw. Yeah, that worked phenomenally. In my case, I actually, they had straight sides, so rather than using a turning saw, I just cut them with a handsaw. Any straight angle is very easy to cut with a handsaw. Sorry, trying to get this question over here. This question was from John Wiegand. Sorry, name butcher here. I don't think I answered your question, but yeah. If I'm going to be using something I would need to turn, I use a turning saw. If it's straight, then I use a handsaw. Question from Brandon White. Do you use a chisel or a plane to keep those beard lines so straight? Well, yes, I do use a plane blade. No, I don't. What is a burnisher? A burnisher is a hard piece of smooth steel. And there are burnishers as in, sorry, I just have to add this in here. 44. You can buy a burnisher, which is usually a handle with a smooth shank of steel coming out. They were fairly common for sharpening knives. And that's, the old movies where you see them going and they're sharpening the knife with that. And for a long time, my burnisher I used was a knife sharpening burnisher. It has these fine ridges running along it, but that still works fine. But any piece of hardened, smooth steel can be a burnisher. It's just what is used to pull the burr off of the corner of the card scraper, so that it becomes that tiny burr actually becomes the cutting edge, so you can cut wood. Ooh, why is it not working now? There we go. And let's see, where's the next question? From Markus Ricardo. Have you used any glue on that side table? I think I answered that one earlier, but no, there's no glue, no hardware on the side table at all. When restoring a metal hand plane, what is the best way to remove paint? In my opinion, the best way is sandblasting. I love the surface you get with sandblasting. It's really easy. Everything comes off. It cleans the rust. It cleans the paint. It takes it down to bare metal. The downside to it is it does take off a little bit of the metal as well and leaves the metal with a bit of a texture. I have in the past used several chemical paint strippers, and I haven't found one particular that I like over others. But yeah, those are the two big options, unless you really want to spend a lot of time scraping and scrubbing, either using a chemical that softens the paint so it can scrub up, or using a sandblaster. And that's why sandblasting is my choice. TJ's Woodworking Shop. Are you TJ's brother? My brother. Oh, yes. If you ever want a joke, TJ's the one to go ask. Looking for questions down here. Tim Cheatwood asks, want to add a bench dogs and hold fast to my bench, but I don't know where to begin as far as drilling holes. Should they all be tapered, etc.? My bench is 2 inches thick. If your bench is 2 inches thick, there is no reason to taper them. And put them where you want to use them. If you're using bench dogs, you're probably going to want them in a row off of your end device. And so you either have to figure out how often do you want to space them in that row, and that depends by how much do you want to have to move that end device in order to clamp something. So if you put them every 3 inches down the row, then you never have to move that end device more than 3 inches. On my old bench, I had a quick release and moved very quickly, and so I put them about 6 inches apart, which is a decent amount of travel for most benches. But for mine, it was fast and easy. For hold fast, I would say hold off on that. Drill all your holes for your dogs. And then if there is a time where you want to put the hold fast, but one of the dog holes won't work, then drill a hole where you want it to be. And I usually ended up with probably had like 4 or 5 other holes drilled in my bench that weren't in the dog hole line, that I could then use the hold fast for. And you usually find out that there's like 4 or 5 locations that it's just nice to have it. There's a whole science behind it. If you really want to get into laying out the holes and never drilling anymore, you can do that, but then there's going to be a bunch of holes you drilled that you're never going to use. So I like to drill them as needed, and work from there. Hold fasts, usually there's 4 or 5 operations that you're doing that you're going to be chopping in on the wood, and you just want to hold it in place, and usually that's going to be around your legs. So as long as you can reach any of the places right around where your leg comes up into the bench top, you're usually pretty good. If you want to see a whole scientific video on that, Shannon Rogers put one out a couple months ago, I think it was, where he really went into detail and talked about all the thought processes and methods for that. So yeah, definitely check that out if you want to see that. Do I have a Stanley rabbit plane? No, I do not. Actually, I don't have a metal rabbit plane. That is on my list to get. I've used them quite a few times, but I've never actually purchased one for myself. Question from Joe's Basement Woodworking. Can I ask a non-woodworking question? Sure, go for it. Dillons Woodworks asks, what type of finish would you recommend for cedar? I'm making a laptop stand, so it will get lots of use. If I hate the question of what finish would you recommend. If you're talking like an end table or something like that, where a stand you're going to be putting something on, and it's probably going to be scratching around, you're going to want a film finish. A boil linseed oil paste wax finish isn't going to give you that durable finish you want. And for most film finishes, I like a wipe-on poly. I like its simplicity. It's one-step use. If you use like a water-based poly, they're a little easier to put on, but you don't get any coloring you would from the wipe-on, the oils in the poly. So I would have to know more about it, and the type of wood really has less to do with it than the use of the piece. And like for cedar, when you put on an oil-based finish, it's going to bring out a lot of that color in the cedar, but a lot of that color will then dull over time as it sits and light gets to it. So I think you're probably going to want to go with a poly, but play around with it. The best way to do it is take some cut off scraps and get a couple different finishes and test them out and see what you like. And that's really one of the best ways to learn about finish and kind of get that use of it under your belt and see what do you like in this use, what do you like in this use. And I know a lot of people say, well, I use a lot of boiled linseed oil and paste wax. It's because I've been building a lot of my shop furniture. But I use a lot of other things. I have water locks, I have poly, I have water-based poly, I have a varnish, I have shellac, and I use them in different uses in different locations and different types. And so there's a lot of it is just playing it by ear and seeing what I like, what I don't like. And you'll never know that until you actually get the chance to experiment and play with it. Ooh, question, is shellac okay to use on a benchtop finish? Sure, go for it. Shellac is a great finish. It's actually a relatively easy finish to use. The only thing I don't like about it is that it tends to have a lot of color in it, and you've got to like that color. But if you do, great, go for it. But that also depends on the type of shellac, and there's Balance shellacks that have less color and others that are intended to be more color. And once you start getting into all those, then the sky's the limit. Joe's Basement asks, my dishwasher won't drain. How do I get it to drain after it runs a cycle? Well, number one, ask yourself, does the dishwasher have a garbage disposal unit? A lot of dishwashers do, in which case that unit may be bad. Or number two, something might be clogging it. You run a snake down it. But yeah, that is an interesting question to ask on here. Have you tried carving spoons? Just got Peter's video, and I'm going to give it a shot. Yes, I have carved spoons in the past. It is on my list to do a video on it, but I just haven't gotten around to doing that video yet. That's another fun one to make. Here's a weird question. How does oak smell bad when you cut it or drill into it? Just wondering, why does oak smell bad? That's an interesting question. And a lot of people don't like the smell of oak, and I love the smell of oak. I was raised in a shop where it was almost all red oak, and that smell brings back memories, and it's a very, very, very good smell to me. So I don't know why a lot of people don't like it, but I don't know. A lot of people don't like the smell of boiled linseed oil, but I love the smell of boiled linseed oil. So that's each your own. You just got to develop that good memory that goes along with the smell. Question, do you have any plans to make a handsaw from scratch? Do you have any plans to make a handsaw from scratch, like a back saw? Yes, that is on my list as well. I have a long list. But yes, I would like to make a back saw in the future. I would like to actually make a set of saws. We will see. If you want a video on that, Bearcat Woodworking, he actually makes saws, but he has several videos on making back saws, and some of his are the most gorgeous and beautiful saws ever in existence. So definitely go check out his channel. Hey, thanks, DJ. It was a lot of dishwasher questions. This is kind of cool. We're becoming a plumbing channel. Nice. Let's see. James Koehn asks, do you sharpen your own bandsaw blade? And if so, what's a good way? Is there any video on that? No. Bandsaw blades are so cheap that I just replace them. Like the ones I have in my turning saw, once it gets dull, I just cut a new one, because I'll end up buying like a whole bandsaw for it. Well, I only use 20 inches at a time, and so I'll just cut out another chunk once it gets dull. It's just not worth my time to sharpen it. But yeah, if I were to sharpen it, I would do it the exact same way as I would with a handsaw, only on the smaller scale of a bandsaw. Wow, a lot of talk about the dishwasher. So trying to find the next question. How does one gain the attention? Oh no, I just jumped. I hate it when it does that. Every now and then it'll bounce and fall. Oh, Dillons Woodworks. Thanks for the feedback. That's kind of cool. You're actually the first person to give me a super chat, so thanks for that, man. Let's see. Where are the questions? How does one gain the attention span to run 50 miles? I get bored after 3. This is from Clean Phil Wanted, another great channel. Definitely check out. He does hand tool woodworking as well. But I don't know if it's the attention span as much as it is the mental fortitude of just being stubborn. Once I get something in my brain, I can't get rid of it. But yeah, it's I put on a good audiobook and I can run for hours. The longest I've done straight was 10.5 hours once. But once I do the 50 miles, I'm hoping to accomplish that in under 12. It'll probably end up being about 13 hours. So we'll see. Use hand tools and more satisfaction. Have you tried any of the new Stanley Sweetheart stuff? Yes, actually. This is from Jack Beardman. Breenman. Sorry, another name I butchered. Yes, I have their the Stanley Sweetheart low angle jack, and I really like it. It's cheap, and there are cheap parts on it, but for what it does, it actually works very well. It's a very simple plane, and for the price, I think it is a fantastic value. Are you going to get the same quality as if you spend twice as much on a Lee Nielsen? No, but for the price, it is phenomenal. Let's see. Come up with. How did you come up with your logo? This is from Escol Skal. Yeah, I'm not even going to say that one. Actually, I went to Fiverr and I had a guy who would come up with, I think he had like 6 or 7 logo ideas, and they were ideas that would be jumping off points for in the future. And so I said, I want my name is Wood by Wright, and I do woodworking and I use hand tools. And so he had a bunch of logos with hand tools and hand planes and chisels and things like that. And then he had this simple one of the circle and 2 W's crossing. It was like, there's my logo. So yeah, that's Fiverr to the rescue. So once he had the idea on there, then I just could take the idea and run with it and came up with what is currently the logo. I think I'm coming down to the end, so if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them here quickly. Otherwise, I'm probably wrapping this up in a minute. And have you ever built anything with redwood? By redwood, I'm guessing you're talking about cedar, but there are a bunch of different redwoods, unless you're talking about one of the actual redwoods, as in, well, the cedar is one of the redwoods. And yes, I have used quite a bit. I've done a lot of exterior work and construction with it, and it's a good wood, soft. So for a lot of things in furniture, I don't like using the softer woods, but they work well. And for hand tools, it is a fantastic wood. It cuts like butter. It's smooth. It's silky, and a lot of fun to use. And adding this into the chat. There we go. And thanks again for that, Dillons Woodworks. You're the first person who's given me a super chat. Ever thought of using the metric system? Yes, I would love to use the metric system. It is such a smarter system. The 2 downsides I have is, number one, I rarely use measuring devices in what I do, unless I'm working off plans, which is something I've been doing more of. And so I have to talk more about measurements because I'm using plans. And I would much rather use the metric system. The problem is over 60% of my audience is from the United States. And US has tried many times to change the metric system, but there are too many old farts who won't change to the metric system. And it is a burr up my saddle. Yeah, I'll leave that one alone. But needless to say, yes, I would like to switch to it, but at this time, it won't work for me. What do you think about using resin to make a new kind of finish? new way of gluing and filling holes. I use resin quite a bit for filling knots and cracks and things of that nature. I love it for that. I have used a bar top finish a couple times. In other words, a really thick built-up surface that is great for tables where you want to see the grain through it, but you don't ever want a scratch to touch the wood. For that, it works fairly well. Ever tried Japanese planes? Yes, I have. I don't want to move into them because it is a whole nother mindset and methodology to pull things to you, whereas everything in the Eastern system is pushing things away from you. So it's a whole nother series. And one of these years, I will probably break down and do like an entire Japanese corner of the shop where I'll make a bench on the floor and have everything right there. So maybe we'll see. But I've used them a few times. I'm not a fan of it because it requires a different physical system and a different way of feeling the planes. So sometime in the future I will, but not right now. Question, is using BLO and paste wax a good for a butcher block? If you are using natural BLO and paste wax, then yes, like stuff you make yourself, or I've shown videos of how to make it. That is great for butcher blocks and cutting boards. The stuff from the store, no. The chemical additives for drying quicker will preclude that from being a good source of anything touching food. So yeah. Best wood to practice hand cut dovetails. The best advice I can give you is don't practice cutting dovetails. A lot of people out there, espouse doing the dovetail a day to get used to doing it. And every time I have to go back and cut new dovetails, it's been a couple months since I've done a dovetail, and I have to kind of reteach myself and rethink through it because I don't cut them all that often. I do not espouse to practicing them. If you want to cut a dovetail on a drawer, then cut a dovetail on it. It's not as difficult as people make it look. It is really a simple system once you get over the idea of precision from power tools. You're not going to have that precision in hand tools right off the bat. It's a skill. You got to learn it. And the only way to do it is jump in. And the easiest way to learn, in my opinion, is to try on the actual project. And if there's a slight imperfection there, oh well, it's handmade. And everyone sees that. It's a normal thing. Would red oak be a good material to use for making a workbench? My client's bench is made out of pine and Douglas fir. I'm hoping to build from oak. Yeah, red oak is fantastic for that. I know red oak gets a lot of abuse as being the cheaper wood, but red oak is actually a really nice wood. It's very sturdy. It has good properties to it. So definitely, yeah, jump into that. What does a corrugated bottom on a plane do? This is from Fruition Forge. Yes. A corrugated bottom was originally designed and advertised as an easier plane to push through the wood. It is not. The corrugation does not make it easier to push through the wood. So the reason it was made is moot. It's a bad reason. It doesn't work. It does not make it easier to push through the wood. Now, one of the benefits over the corrugated is, number one, it's worth more, and the collectors want it more, and so for that, the collection value of it costs more. The other nice thing about it is because there's less material there, it's easier to flatten, but that is kind of a side thing to owning it because you have to use it for decades before it needs to be flattened again. So yes, if you're looking to restore it, corrugated makes it easier to flatten. If you're working on any thin stock, the corrugation becomes a pain. And that's why only, I think, 2 of my regular mainstay tools are corrugated, and they're ones that I don't use that much. I'm not a big fan of it, so yeah. Recommended hand plane for smoothing tabletops and dressing edges for gluing. There are too many questions that have to come to mind. The hand plane is chosen by what you want it to do. If you're wanting to smooth the top, you're going to want a smaller sole, like a number 3 and number 4. That way it will ride with the undulations of the wood. and you'll be able to smooth across it. If you're wanting to join for edges, you're going to want something longer. Usually you want something that is about half the length of the board, or at least half the length of the board, so that you can get a nice flat true edge to reference against as you're planing. And I have several videos on how to choose a plane for the work if you want to see that. That was from Daniel Flather. And we add that one in here, 06. Okay, here's the last question from Cody Nelson. Do you have any preferred steel for various tools? No. A lot of people really talk about the steel and having good quality steel and having this and that, and I could care less. The cheaper steels you have to sharpen more often, but only slightly more often. And when you do, it's easier to sharpen the cheaper steels because they cut easier. Whereas the higher quality steels you have to sharpen less often, but they then become harder to sharpen. So 6 of one, half dozen another. I don't have any particular steel I like. I do like PMV 11 when I order from Veritas because they give you the choice of steels. I really like Hawk's steel. I think they use 01. Yeah, I think they use 01. I've used A2 in quite a few. And steel is steel. Don't worry about it. Until you work with hand tools for a long, long time, you're never going to tell the difference. So yeah, just enjoy what you have. So I think that'll do it for today. This has been a lot of fun, and I am looking forward to this. If I didn't get your question, feel free to send me an email. I'd love to answer it there and help you out with that. Also, if you are going to be anywhere near Fredericksburg on the 3rd, I'm looking forward to meeting you there. So that's about it for today. Until next time, have a wonderful day.